This is Captain's Log with your host, Captain Mark Gray. Welcome aboard.
Sea tales are true stories with a safety message by people who have been out in the ocean and know what things can go wrong and how to handle it. And we'll be back to tell a sea tale right after this. My Sea Tales guest is John Von Collin. How are you doing, sir?
How are you, Mark?
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Could you give us a brief history of your boating experience?
Yeah, I've started boating when I was about 12 years old on the East Coast in New Jersey. I've had a boat at that time, was a small boat, of course, and ever since then I've had probably 25 to 30 different styles or types of boats. I was in a Sea Scouts that was sponsored by the Coast Guard Auxiliary on the East Coast. And for a period of time, I got out of boating when I lived in the desert in San Bernardino County. We then decided to come back to the ocean and purchased a 31-foot boat and liked it so much here in Channel Islands Harbor that we purchased this 40-foot Nova, and we're liveaboards here in Pacific Corinthian Marina.
Well, this looks like a comfortable boat to live aboard, without a doubt.
We enjoy it very much. It's very quiet, peaceful down here during the week, and if the people come down on the weekends, it livens up a little bit.
Well, I understand you have a sea tale for us, a true story with a safety message.
Yes, this past July the 4th, our Pacific Corinthian Yacht Club group decided to go to a cove called Forney's Cove. And if you know anything about Santa Cruz Island, Forney's Cove is at the west end of Santa Cruz Island, and it's behind the little hook in the island. And the cove itself is very smooth. However, you have winds generally from 20 to 45, 50 knots most of the time. And on this particular cruise, we had my son John and his girlfriend Eileen with us. And we anchored in a very nice spot. The winds were blowing pretty good, but the cove was smooth, and we were there for a couple of days, and we had no anchor problems at all. Everything was great. It was running along real good, except the wind. And one of the days, they decided they wanted to go diving, scuba diving. And when they went scuba diving, they said that they wanted to use one of our inflatables, which is the inflatable on top of the boat here. And we don't have a motor for it, but we have a second inflatable that we use, and we tow it along whenever we have guests. Well, with all the equipment you have to carry when you're diving, we decided to load all the equipment in the second inflatable and tow them over to the spot that they wanted to dive within the cove. And this one particular day, the wind was not really heavy, maybe 15, 20 knots, and it was a nice day. The sun was shining, and we get back over to the area they wanted to dive, and there's a little bit of kelp in there. So they did their diving. We tied off to the kelp, did their diving. They were down for maybe 30, 35 minutes. Came back up, and we decided that we were going to get ready to leave. Untied the line from the kelp and started to leave, and the wind started to come up a little more. Started blowing a little more. Back off to our east, behind us, where the wind was blowing towards, was a large area that was jagged rocks behind us. The jagged rocks were maybe 50 yards away from us, and the wind started blowing us towards it. I started the engine up. We were just about getting ready to pull out of there. Then all of a sudden, the engine revved up for some reason. Started checking to find out what the engine revved up for, and what had happened was we busted a shear pin.
This is on the outboard.
On the outboard motor of the dinghy that was towing the other one.
For our non-boating friends, could you explain what the shear pin is?
Okay, shear pin is there's a propeller on a shaft that comes out of the bottom of the engine, and that shear pin goes through the propeller, through the shaft, and when it's intact, it holds the propeller on, and it it turns the propeller, the shaft turns the pin, and which in turn is hooked to the propeller. Well, the shear pin is made out of brass so that it can shear. If it's made out of steel, you'll ruin your prop, you'll ruin your shaft, you might break the shaft or the gears. Well, the shear pin broke, and when the shear pin broke, of course the wind was blowing us, and it was blowing us towards the rocks. Well, we didn't have an anchor on board, we didn't have an extra shear pin, we didn't have a toolkit on board, so we were in a little bit of a problem. The only fortunate thing, we were still in the kelp. When we grabbed a hold of the kelp, we tied off to the kelp, and it kept us from blowing onto the rocks. However, we still had a problem as how we were going to get out of there. When we finally we decided that we had to call for help. Fortunately, we had a VHF handheld radio with us, and the VHF handheld radio, we called some of our people within the area, and they came and pulled us out. If it was not for having the handheld, we would have been out there for a long period of time waiting for help because everybody thought we were still diving.
Perhaps you could break loose from the kelp and continue your journey there if the wind picked up or something.
If we tried to do that, though, we would have been blown onto the rocks.
No, I'm saying that how you were tied to it, perhaps the kelp might let go eventually.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
So what we did was we called for help, and we got the assistance we needed to pull us out of there. Well, I think the interesting part about the story is, number one, I've been in boating long enough to know that we need to carry the tools and the equipment that we need to do the job. We need to carry extra shear pins. We need to carry fuel. We need to carry the VHF radio, and that all of that will prevent some probable damage that may occur. I think it's important for everybody to know when they go out there. They're never going to know what they're going to need when they go. They should have all the safety equipment they need. If they don't have the safety equipment they need, they could get themselves in trouble. And I have seen many, many people out there in an inflatable raft, and you ask them if they've got fuel, if they've got shear pins, if they've got toolkits, and nobody has that equipment.
Nobody really. Another thing is, like, you might need a spark plug. You might need the wrench for the spark plug, or a wire or this. I find it handy to have little clamps and accessories also.
Generally, the little clamps and things of that nature are ones that you need if you have a separate gas tank. If you have a gas tank within the motor, then you don't need that. But it's very handy to have the VHF radio is one of the most important pieces of equipment I think you should have to call for help.
Yeah, because you can't anticipate every situation, but that VHS can get you help.
That's right, and in this case, it did help us.
Yeah, they cost, I think, about $250. It's really an investment worthwhile. Plus, on a lot of boats, people run their battery down and the radio doesn't work and stuff. So VHS is good. Well, this has been Captain's Log, Sea Tales, true stories that could save your life. And we'll be back with another one right after this.